All right, it's September 2025. You know that obviously means football is right around the corner once again, and we're back another year. New room, new situations, a lot of new stuff going on, but we're still going to go ahead and get videos out for you. And Mathis and I are definitely committed to doing that. We just did some stuff on his channel with betting, and we're going to be doing it weekly. And we also obviously have some stuff going on my channel, and this is one of the bigger ones, and it's predicting what's going to happen at the beginning of the season like we do always. And we're going to come back and see where we were right, wrong, probably mostly, hopefully right, but it's hard to predict some of this stuff. Every team looks great. Everyone thinks their team looks great before the season actually starts, and then you get into it and stuff changes. So I have Mathis NFL here with me. Going to be more of a podcast style-ish YouTube video, but I'll have timestamps below for you to, if you want to skip through. We're going to rank each division. So all 8 divisions. We're going to get our playoff teams, see if we have different, opinions about certain teams and players there, and then if that were to be the real playoffs, we'd go ahead, predict it, and then give you our preseason Super Bowl winners and see if we are right on the nose. Mathis, thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm really amped up, ready to go. We had college football back this weekend. I guess we had it last weekend, but a lot more games and some big matchups. I'm looking forward to it, especially the NFL season. We're about a week away from when we're recording, so exciting times for sure as we get here, entering the fall.
Beautiful. So we're just going to jump right into it. Again, don't want it to be, insanely long because, again, some teams, unfortunately, don't want to offend your fan, but it might require more talk than others. But let's go ahead and let's start off with one that I think is always interesting, but one that's, in my opinion, full of just a ton of potential. I think I could see all of these teams making the playoffs, and I could also see a world, because it happened last year, where none of them except one obviously makes the playoffs, and that is going to be the NFC West. We obviously have the Rams, Niners, Seahawks, and Cardinals. For my rankings, I think both of us probably have this. Maybe we're wrong. I think it's an easy number 4, not to dismay them a ton, but just because I feel like they just don't really keep up with the other teams. They went through some changes, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. I have them going around seven wins, somewhere around there. Offense, it just is so up and down with what I like and don't like. Obviously, the running game going to look really good. Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet. I liked Damian Martinez in the draft, and they got him in a 7-round steal. The receivers very much, changed. DK and Lockett gone, but I love JSN. Cooper Kupp is my guy, but he's very much older. Don't know how much you can rely on him. They got rid of Noah Fant, but they have Elijah Arroyo from Miami, who I liked. They have a ton of rookies that I liked. But the O-line, Gray Zabel, they drafted, it's just not going to make it much better. It's still a bottom 5 O-line. Sam Darnold, I understand the year he had. It's just the O-line with Sam Darnold is my biggest worry, to be honest, especially with him leaving what was an amazing situation. And the defense is solid, but I just don't think good enough. I don't think the D-line is good enough, although it is deep. I think it's volatile. The secondary is great, but I just don't think it's enough to carry them, really. So I have Seahawks 4, pretty obvious. Do you agree or have any other notes on them?
I do not actually have Seattle fourth. I guess
Oh,
I'm
okay. Interesting.
I guess I'm a bit higher on them than you, or the kind of the consensus this year. I think Seattle is actually a really interesting team. I do think to a certain extent they're a little underrated in the fact that if you look at the last few years, they've been like a 9-10 win team. And so I think that kind of they go under the radar a little bit. I think last year they won 10 games and they didn't make the playoffs. But I think again this year they have a chance to kind of be in that range. I know it's a couple of big changes on the offense, like you mentioned, DK being gone. Geno Smith was pretty good for them, but I kind of view Darnold and Geno as pretty similar players. And I think you add him into that offense, you get Clint Kubiak now as the offensive coordinator. I think that's an upgrade from Grubb, or the guy that they had last year, taking over that spot. So I think Seattle can kind of be where they've been, and we'll talk about a couple other teams that are also in this division and why I'm a little bit lower or higher on some of these teams. But I have the Arizona Cardinals at number 4. And for me, I know they made a lot of offseason additions. Their defense has improved, but I just can't really get behind a Kyler Murray led team at this point. I just think he's such an inconsistent player. You see it some weeks where he's a top 5 quarterback in the league, and then other weeks he looks like a bottom 5 quarterback in the league. And I think that's just the overall synopsis of this Cardinals team, where they could be a 6, 7, 8 win team. They'll be in that mix again, just like they were last year. But when it comes to the key games and being consistent week in and week out, I just don't think you're going to see that with the Cardinals and Kyler Murray. I still have some questions about their secondary. I did like Will Johnson, but he fell to the second round due to some injury concerns. Can he stay healthy in his rookie season? We'll see. And then offensively, I do like Marvin Harrison Jr., but I do think there's a kind of a lack of weaponry as well on the outside. I don't think Marv is going to live up to the generational hype. I do think Neighbors, looking back now, was the right receiver to go ahead of him. But obviously that didn't happen. Marv had that pedigree coming from Ohio State. But yeah, I had the Cardinals at number 4.
Okay, so I think it's just a simple flip for us because I have Cardinals 3, Seahawks 4, so that's probably just one differ there, just how we view each team. I mean, for me, I think it was more just kind of looking back or just I guess taking a step back to look because they went 8-9 last year and they had the 5th highest winning percentage on their schedule, and they really only got better as a team in my opinion. Multiple years with the offensive coordinator, and now they have a schedule that is borderline, top 10, kind of around the middle. It doesn't really matter. All those guys are similar, but the schedule last year was just very hard for them, and they won 8 games. So, I mean, even if they just go up 1, I still feel like that's enough to, weirdly enough, make a playoff, potential surge like they did last year, but obviously maybe come up short. And I think I just view maybe certain guys impacting more, like, the D-line I just really like. I think it can get pretty underrated there with Calais Campbell, Josh Sweat they signed. I loved Walter Nolan in the draft. He was injured now, but I think it's not anything major. Darius Robinson, just a first-round pick from last year, didn't really get to play a lot. The secondary is young, and it should be even better as well with Garrett Williams and all the guys they have there. I also like BJ Ojolari. He hasn't played in a year or two, and he was also a former higher pick. And when he played, I think his rookie year, he actually looked pretty good. DeDorian Taylor-Demerson, another guy in the secondary. You mentioned Will Johnson. So it's not like Will Johnson needs to be there for them to succeed. I still feel like they have stuff there. So I just kind of feel like based on what they did last year, I feel like they could kind of have a similar year. So that's kind of why I have them at 3. And I probably just view the Seahawks a little bit lower. So that's just flip there, but it doesn't really matter. None of them are in the playoffs. The other two, I personally do have both in the playoffs. Do you have the Niners and the Rams, whatever, way we'll have them ranked? Do you have them both in the playoffs?
Well, there's a shocking development here, but the Rams are actually my 3rd place team in this division. I have Seattle at number 2.
Wow. Okay, go in on Seattle then. Oh, that's shocking. Go in on Seattle if you have them at number 2. Do you have them?
Yeah.
Do you have them making the playoffs?
I have Seattle making the playoffs as my number 7 seed this year. For the Rams, I am red flagging the Matthew Stafford injury, and if he misses any sort of time, I'm just out on the Rams. I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo at all. I think the last time we saw him play for the Raiders, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and I think he's kind of gun shy at this point. And if he has to play again, extended time for the Rams, I just don't think they're going to be a playoff team. And so when I think you see Stafford now, a 36, 37-year-old quarterback who's having a back injury before he's even started getting hit really the last several months, I'm going to fade that. And maybe I'm wrong, and he seems like he's okay, and he's healthy throughout the entire season. But even, from my experiences, I have a lot of experience watching kind of an injury-prone or injured quarterback. I know how that can derail a season, and I'm just going to fade that for the Rams and have Seattle, again, who I just think is a pretty underrated team, what they've done the last few years. I think Mike McDonald, one of the best defensive minds in the league, is going to have that defense probably, in my opinion, a top 10 unit. And if that's a top 10 defense and you've got a an offense that should be able to rely on some play action pass, which is a very similar scheme to what Sam Darnold ran last year, kind of the West Coast Kubiak type of offense. I just think Seattle can be a 9-10 win team and sneak into the playoffs. And I think with the Stafford injury history and his back, I'm just going to bump up Seattle over the Rams.
Okay, because definitely I like we're having two big differences here, which the next divisions I'll probably just ask straight away the rankings, because I have the Rams first. I have them first in their division, mainly because I know a lot of the different reportings that have come out. I know as of recently, they've said that they still need to monitor it. Just from what I had kind of seen in terms of listening to people actually talk about it, because it was concerning. I still think it's just not going to keep him out to a point where I'm going to be super worried. And that's just kind of what I've gotten based off that. Maybe I view Jimmy a little bit better. Obviously, I don't love him, but I just think with the offense he was in, like comparing what he was with the Raiders to what he could be with the Rams, I think is like, hey, look at Sam Darnold before and now look at him with the Vikings. I'm not saying that's what it would be. It'd be for sure a tier at least below that. But the same idea kind of stands for me if that were to be the case. And I just really love I love McVay. I just love the stuff he does. And if they don't get hurt, I think they're going to be a really good team. The Devontae Adams, I think, still got it. I think he still has it, and he's going to be an amazing addition. If Puka stays healthy, he was literally a top 3 receiver last year in the NFL. He absolutely was. And Tyler Higbee's back from his injury. They used a second-round pick on Terrence Ferguson at tight end. The receivers, they just know how to make these guys productive. Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, they know how to just make these guys they get go and be productive. That's what he does. The O-line, I think, has a high floor, and the defense, I think, is just really good. The D-line's very young and only improving. In terms of the secondary, those guys 2 years ago were horrible, and now they kind of just wrote it out, and they've all gotten just a little bit better. Darius Williams kind of being the best out of that group. And then another guy that I really like is Chris Paul Jr., who was a linebacker I thought was NFL ready, and he can come in and be a great replacement for them here. So I really view, I know the star power doesn't really hit as much with this team. I just think they are a playoff lock for me, in my opinion, and I do have them winning the division. And I understand your concern with Stafford. I just think we view it a little bit just differently in terms of the severity, which, again, I do see the reports like, yeah, they're coming out and saying, hey, they need to monitor it more. I just think, look, the schedule's not that bad. I mean, it's not amazing, but it could be much worse. I know they have a division. Maybe I just view it slightly easier, the division, but I actually have them 1 and you have them 3. So then we both have the Niners, I assume, at 2, if that's correct.
I have the Niners.
I have
1.
the Niners. Oh, no, you have them 1. Okay, sorry, yeah, you have the Seahawks 2. I forgot. So Seahawks 2, and then you obviously have the Niners 1, and I almost put the Niners 1. I agree. I'm not dying on a hill that the Rams are winning the division, but I would that the Rams are making the playoffs. That would kind of be my distinction. So, hey, if a report were to come out tomorrow and say Stafford is missing 4 games, I would switch this for sure. I would do that, and I'd have no problem. And you can kind of go into them first because I went on the Rams. But my biggest thing is they had the hardest schedule at the end of the year in 2024, the highest win percentage against. And going into 2025, they are projected to have by far the lowest win percentage, being the best strength of schedule in terms of favorability towards them. So, yeah, with them having injuries last year, getting healthier this year, they are a pretty easy 10-win team, at least, like at the very least 10 wins. And I think also a team that I'm also pretty confident saying is going to make the playoffs as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the 49ers, again, kind of just coincide everything that you just said. Very easy schedule. Brock Purdy back this year, paid a bunch of money. So it's kind of his time to prove, hey, he was worth that contract, or, he somewhat deserved it or whatever. But I think the 49ers, the one concern I kind of have is they've already been dealing with a ton of injuries. It feels like every year they're losing a bunch of players. Luckily, it hasn't been like McCaffrey and Kittle, but it's been some of their depth pieces, which is just something to
Fingers
watch.
crossed.
Right, but I think as long as their main star players can stay healthy, I mean, stars is really what wins you games in the NFL if they're healthy and on the field. And if you got Kittle, you got McCaffrey, you've got Trent Williams playing, the offense is going to be fine. And, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, if all those guys play, I think the 49ers will comfortably be in the playoffs. And I just think with that schedule aspect that you mentioned, I think it's pretty, I feel pretty good about having them in the postseason and for me, particularly winning the NFC West.
Yeah, and with them, I mean, again, the draft. I follow the draft a ton. I really like the impact some of these guys can come and have. They went heavy on the D line with guys like C.J. West out of Indiana, and I just really think they helped that D line. And then the secondary, I know they lost Javarius Ward, but he had a rough year. He was kind of dealing with some mental issues last year. Renardo Green from Florida State last year was a great second-round pick. They still have Diamador Lenore. They have a bunch of depth there. Malik Mustafa, Jairi Brown. And then I really like Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky, another guy. They've drafted a good amount of these guys that were older, like in the mid-rounds, that can help right now with this defense. Obviously, with the stars they have, like Fred Warner and the other guys you mentioned. And the only other concern for me, which is why when I looked at them both objectively, the Rams and the Niners, in terms of comparison, obviously my view of Brock Purdy, which everyone on this channel is very aware of, but just the receivers I do believe in. It's just I don't like it. I just think McCaffrey is holding a ton up here until they got Brian Robinson, which helps a lot in the run. But even just receiving, I think he's going to do a ton, especially without Brandon Ayuk. And when Brandon Ayuk comes back, how good is he going to be? Juwan Jennings, I think, is a very up and down player, but Ricky Pearsall is going to be the guy that has to fill in, and I think he can. It's just to what level, I'm not sure. And then outside of him, I don't really trust anyone else. So, it's not a bad core at all whatsoever. It's just, like you said, treading on thin ice with some of the guys there. And the O-line I like too. O-line is not really an issue. Play calling, we know. So I think they're going to be back, no question. It's just a matter of how good will they be? Will they be a wild card team or division winner? And that's my opinion. I think is kind of a simple conversation there. Do you have any other teams or anything else you want to touch on for the NFC West?
No, I think I'm good to move on.
All right, perfect. Let's go ahead. Let's move to an AFC division. We're going to go ahead and start off with the AFC. Let's do the West as well. A very intriguing one there. Let's just go ahead and rank 4 through 1 for each one, and then we'll kind of dive in and see which ones we have the biggest difference on or want to talk about. Number 4, I have Raiders. Pretty self-explanatory there. I have Chargers 3, Broncos 2, and then Chiefs 1. I understand there could be a big rearranging of these guys there, and the odds that all three make the playoffs again, I'm not 100% sure are as likely as people think, just because of what we know with playoff statistics. But obviously, it's not like it's impossible, because it's probably more likely than not they do. I'm just not picking it, to be honest. Shockingly, I actually do have the Chargers missing the playoffs, and I have the Broncos getting in. Maybe not what people expected, which I can explain later, but that's my ranking of the NFC West. What do you have?
Very similar. I have the Raiders at number 4, the Chargers at 3, but I have the Chiefs at 2 and the Broncos at 1.
Okay.
I feel like I do this every year where I can just I try and predict almost that the year the Chiefs take a slight step back. And it doesn't really make a ton of rational sense, because if you look on paper, the Chiefs roster is probably better this year than it was last year. But I just think the Broncos, I really believe in their roster this year. I think they have a head coach that's probably top 5 in the league. And so if you've got a really good head coach to kind of compete with Andy Reid, you've got a roster that you could probably argue player for player, if you just take out quarterback, the Broncos roster is better. Like on their defense, they're loaded. They had one of the best defenses in the league last year. They add Hufanga, they add Drake Greenlaw, they add Jahdae Barron. I'm pretty high on that defense being one of the best in the league. You bring in RJ Harvey, Pat Bryant, just some more young weapons for Bo Nix. I just think if Bo takes kind of a slight step up, or just kind of even maintains what he did last year, where he accounted for over 30 touchdowns, which I don't think is really mentioned a lot. Like, he had a really good rookie season. I think the Broncos can be 11, 12 win team. And if that's the case, I think they can win the AFC West. So let's get kind of wild here and predict a slightly different outcome than I think most may have. Although the Broncos have been kind of a fun kind of sleeper pick that people have been putting out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just can't. It's just so hard for me to say the Chiefs won't, but I could see it happening. So that's why I just couldn't predict it. But for the Broncos, I totally agree. I think they only got better. I think the head coach is obviously very proven. The defense looks awesome and deep and just looks like it's going to be so hard to go against, just on a even schematic perspective. And then offensively, I think what helps a lot is the O-line. The O-line is a top 5 O-line, maybe top 3. I think that helps a ton. They only added with playmakers, in my opinion, with RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins coming in. I think, Harvey, whether he gets time early or late, I think is going to be probably the best running back in that room by the end of the season. And they added, Pat Bryant, who's I think is a high floor kind of outside X, maybe not, he's not the most like outstanding guy, but just a guy that I think is really helps fit that team and just kind of round out that receiving room. Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, we'll see what happens with them. Odds that one of them does pretty well. I think, pretty good shot there. And then Courtland Sutton is as steady as you can get in the receiving room. And Bo Nix, I don't know how much better he's going to be, but he was pretty solid last year with obviously, a great O-line that helps, but the running he also really helps incorporate as well. Evan Ingram they signed. That's going to help a ton because the tight end was non-existent for them last year. So I totally agree. You took it a step ahead of me, actually, and had him one. But I assume, you had Chiefs too. I don't even really need to go into Chiefs. We can just get into them later. We know the Chiefs. Like we kind of already obviously know. I will say I feel better about this team than last year's team, to be honest. And we just know last year's team just won a ton of close games. Is that repeatable? Maybe because it's the Chiefs. I don't know. But I just think, had some good draft picks I liked and still in there. Didn't lose a ton. So we can get into them later. But I have them one. And then the Raiders, I don't think we need to dive into either because they're, for me at least, kind of the obvious, like, unfortunate for, because in other divisions maybe they're better. Because I really like Geno. They got Genty, really exciting stuff, but the receivers could look terrible. Like, it could look really bad. If Amari Cooper is old and not performing, Jack Besh I like, but it seems like he's not getting as much time as we thought. Deontay Thornton, I guess, the rookie, might do some stuff, but I didn't think he'd be that big year one. It's going to be Brock Bowers or nothing. And the O-line is good, but is it good enough? Defense, Max Crosby, really hard carry. Some other pieces I like, Jeremy Chin, but he's the only relevant secondary guy. Like, this team is just going to get blown up passing-wise, and I don't think they have the passing capability to make up for it. So, Raiders, did you have anything you wanted to kind of touch on for them? If not, I have them 4. I think.
I agree with the Raiders. I mean, I've seen a few people pick them as like their sleeper playoff team this year. I can't really buy it. Kind of with all the points you said. Yeah, I don't think their offensive line is good enough. I think their defense has just a lot of holes on it. So I don't see the Raiders.
If Max gets hurt, it's just like you better hope Tyree Wilson, in year 2 performs, and I think Jacoby requested a trade. We'll see if he even stays. So I already took that into account. So we have them there, and then the Chargers is the most interesting one because we both have them at 3, and I want to ask, do you have them in the playoffs even at 3 in their division?
I do not. I have them very close to making the postseason. Like, I could see them being like one of the 3 teams kind of battling for that 7 seed. But for me, it just kind of comes down to their roster isn't great. The best thing that they really relied on was their offensive line. It was one of the best in the league. They had probably the best tackle duo in the league. And then you lose one of those tackles, and then that kind of just changes the entire identity of the offense and the team. So I think that's going to have, I think Slater's worth like a win or 2 for the Chargers. So I have them probably winning 9 games. If they have Slater, maybe they're a 10 or 11 win team, kind of repeat what they did last year with a higher ceiling. But no, I just don't think they have enough, especially with the Slater injury, to make the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? When Slater got hurt, I did kind of look at it again. And I think it's weird because the team, you could say, objectively got better, but it seems like the injury bug is kind of hitting them a little bit, and I would rather jump off early than stay on too late, in my opinion. Hampton, I love, coming out. I think he's very safe. I don't think he's game-changing. I think he's very safe and good. Herbert. Obviously, we know the talent he has, but Quentin Johnston, I mean, I didn't love it anyways, but did get injured. So now you have Lad McConkey and an old Keenan Allen who can still kind of perform. I think better than Amari Cooper right now for sure, but still not amazing. And then the other receivers up in the air, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert Smith. I didn't love any of them, to be honest. Tight end is a rotation. The O-line is still good, but lost the main guy there. They lost some guys on the D-line like Poona Ford, Joey Bosa. I know Bosa didn't play a lot. They still have Mac Attack, other guys there. They still have some interesting players. The secondary still looks solid with a lot of depth. I just think the Broncos got for sure better, like you said, that just made me feel more comfortable having them in. So I agree. I think the Chargers will be a good team. Like they could easily win 9-8 games, but probably be right out of the playoffs. Not saying that's going to happen, but that's what we're both saying without saying it. So I think, they are also just right out of it for me, but obviously not a shocker if they make it. So that's the AFC West. Pretty simple there. We'll dive into some of the other teams that are actually in the playoffs, which you have the Broncos and the Chiefs, I assume, both in.
Right. Yep.
So we can go ahead and jump next back to the NFC, and we'll do the NFC East. So NFC East, I think this is a simple ranking. We might have one thing flipped, and my guess would be Giants-Cowboys. I have Giants 4, Cowboys 3, Commanders 2, Eagles 1. What's your rankings?
Oh, yeah, very similar. Just one flip-flop. I actually have the Giants 4. I have the Commanders 3, the Cowboys 2, and the Eagles 1.
All right, let's touch on, because Eagles, again, it's like the Chiefs. Who cares? They're going to be so good. Like, we'll touch on them. The Giants, you had 4 as well, right? I know you could probably start off with them. I know, there was some stuff, you kind of liked about them, which I do agree. Yeah. It's just, for me, I think it's a tough spot. I love their Brian Daboll as a coach, and I think he's a good offensive coach. And if he was in a different situation, he'd be safe. But this is one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. I just don't think the offense is good enough. I really don't. Even if Dart shows some stuff, I don't think it's good enough. I think a good D-line helps a ton, and I like some guys on the defense, like Bobby Okereke. Obviously, we can mention all the D-line guys. Andrew Phillips in the back, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin. There are some guys there. I just don't think it's good enough, especially with the offense. Darius Alexander, the rookie from Toledo, I loved. Cam Scadaboo, we met. They had a great draft. But this year, I just don't think it's enough offensively for me with the O-line, weapons, running game, all that stuff. So that's why I had them at 4.
Yeah, I was very close, I'm going to be honest, to having them flip with the Commanders, hilariously enough. But I just couldn't really get there because I really believe in Jaden Daniels a ton. But I think, again, kind of going back to my point that I made about, I think, the last division I was saying, if you go roster for roster, I think the Giants if you take out quarterback, is better than the Commanders. The Commanders roster, talent-wise, is not that good. I think the defensive line for the Giants is ridiculous. It's one of the best in the league. You've got a true X receiver and Malik Neighbors, who I think is already better than Terry McLaurin, and he will be better this upcoming season. There's a little bit more question marks on the offensive line, but if Andrew Thomas plays, you've got one of the best left tackles in the league already playing. So the Giants have some star power. It really just comes down to their quarterback play, and kind of if Andrew Thomas can stay healthy, because if he can play majority of the season, I think their offensive line will be middle of the pack. It'll be just fine. Like having an elite bookend tackle where you can kind of just slide your protection to the other side, just keep him on an island. It really does help out your offensive line play better as a unit. So I just think it kind of just depends. What Russell Wilson do we get? How quickly do we see Jackson Dart? And when he plays, is he pretty good? But I just kind of see this Giants team as like a 6 to 8 win team. Like I could see them going 7-10, but still finishing 4th in this division. That's kind of ultimately what did it for me, is just some uncertainty with Andrew Thomas's health, their quarterback play. But I still think probably 7 wins is probably what I would get to with the Giants with their hard schedule.
And 7 would be my peak. I'm probably closer to 5, so somewhere in the middle there. But definitely touch here because I actually have a pretty large gap between the Cowboys and the Commanders there. Touch on what you like about the Cowboys and what you don't like about the Commanders.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the Cowboys are going to be one of the more fascinating. I mean, I guess they are every year, one of the more fascinating teams to just kind of see how they're going to lose this year. But I think we might have gotten a little bit too far the other way on the Cowboys, because I think if Dak Prescott plays 17 games, like in my mind, I just can't see the Cowboys being like a joke of a team. Because I think when Dak plays, I think I'm a little bit higher on Dak than maybe you are, but I view him as like a top 12 to 10 quarterback any given season when he's playing. And he's got one of the best receivers in the league in CeeDee Lamb. He's now got George Pickens, who we've talked about before. I think he's going to have a good season as well. And defensively, while there's a lot of holes and there's a lot of uncertainty there, if injury luck plays in their favor and Trayvon Diggs and Deron Blank can kind of come back and play majority of the season, I think the secondary could be okay. And Micah Parsons, hopefully he just gets signed, because that would make my prediction maybe feel a bit better about having the number two if he gets signed and he's happy and playing well. Obviously with the Cowboys, there's not really a ton of depth there, and if one of those main stars suffer an injury, all bets are off. But I just think, looking at it, if they can stay relatively healthy, I think Dak can just bring them to being like a 9-8 team, like an 8-win team maybe, and I think that could be good enough to be second in the division.
Okay, I mean, I think you just view the Commanders really low, because I mean I have the Cowboys at like 7 or 8 wins, a ceiling I think of 9-8 in my opinion. And I think nothing you said was necessarily wrong. I just think you touched on it a little bit. There are holes on the defense. Yes, that's my biggest thing. And the second biggest thing is I just don't think they have a formula to make the playoffs. I just don't. You had them number two, but you didn't say if you had them in the playoffs.
No,
Do you have them in the playoffs at
nope,
number two?
I don't.
Okay, so only the Eagles. All right, so fair. We both don't have them in the playoffs either. The Commanders would just be the biggest difference for sure. But with the Cowboys, I mean, my biggest thing is just I don't think they have the recipe to win. I don't think you can have the running back room that they have with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Jaden Blue, which is the worst in the NFL, and it's not even close. Obviously, maybe they won't be the worst because maybe a team gets injured a crap load. But going into the season, this is the worst running back room, and 31 is what? Maybe I don't know, the Giants if Scadboo's not playing. And again, that's because someone's injured, and it's still for sure above. And I just think with Dak throwing the ball a ton, like, yes, I'm not saying he's bad, but I just don't think it's a recipe to win. I really don't, like, consistently. And they added Pickens, which that's going to help if they want to do that. But the O-line is young, and I like it, but it needs to be better. And if Micah's not playing, it's really bad. But they have good defensive pieces. Marshawn Kneeland and Donovan Izaraku are 2 year in a row day 2 picks that I like. They got Siobhan Revelle Jr. from ECU. I like that. They have some good picks here, some good guys here. Even if Parsons plays, I still wouldn't pick him to go in the playoffs just because I just don't think it's a recipe to win. And I think they have the worst head coach in the NFL. I hated the signing. I think it was desperate. I think they just couldn't get anyone because they prematurely fired, a coach that has showed consistent winning before just because his quarterback got injured and because they decided that they didn't care about O-line and that all of the guys prematurely retired on the O-line as well. I think that's kind of the main thing for me. So I just view them lower, but both don't have them in the playoffs anyways. But you have the Commanders not in the playoffs, but not number 2 in their division, number 3 in their division. And that is definitely interesting. I would like to hear your thoughts on the Commanders. I assume it's just because you kind of said you just don't think their roster is as good. But is there anything specific that keeps you back from having them not only not in the playoffs, but not even second in their division?
So yeah, I had them have them number 3, and like I said, I was kind of flirting with having them number 4 in the division, which I mean, I don't know, I just couldn't get that far because I really do like Daniels, but yeah, again, I don't think the roster talent is good, and it did improve. Like they got Laramie Tunsil, Debo Samuel, just some older veteran players, but I mean, let's just be honest. Like they had a horseshoe up their ass like all of last season. I think they won 3 or 4 games where it was just like a last second kind of. I mean, they had a Hail Mary win.
Yes,
they had
true.
They had a couple more like I think against the Eagles they had a last second touchdown win. Against the Cowboys they did. Like they were just not like as good as their record says they were last year. And I think they just got hot at the right time. They had a quarterback playing at a really high level, and that's what helped them in the playoffs. But I think going into this year, when everything kind of resets, everybody's 0-0, and a whole new schedule comes out. Like they're not going to be having as many cupcakes as they did last year. They're not going to be playing Cooper Rush against the Cowboys. Like theoretically, Dak should be playing, and the Cowboys should be a harder matchup for them. I think the Giants are going to be better this year. Like they're not going to be playing Daniel Jones and maybe Tommy DeVito. Like I don't know who they played when the Giants were playing against them. So I just think the Commanders, the roster is more like a 9 or 10 win team at their peak. If you just go off of their on paper, and I just think if everybody else in the division, in my opinion, theoretically should be better from last year, the schedule's going to be harder. They're not going to win as many close one score games and have as many fluky wins as they did last year. I think they'll just kind of come back down to earth a little bit. So we see that often in the NFL where you have a really lucky season and then you have kind of an unlucky season. And I think this could be kind of the year where we see the Commanders just kind of have like a step back and then maybe the following year, in year 3 of Daniels with another offseason, they kind of get back up to that, 10, 11, 12 win range. But I just think for this year, I'm just going to kind of sell high. I believe on the Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I just think maybe I view the roster a little bit better. And I mean, you mentioned like, yeah, they could get like 10 wins or so. 10 wins for me is definitely second in the division and potentially a playoff team. So I still think either way, that thinking would still be like, hey, I'm good for that, you know. I think they obviously have issues. The D line is what keeps them back. Von Miller is there. Not gonna say he's gonna contribute a crazy amount, but it helps. Jerzon Newton is a second round pick last year that they got from Illinois. He needs to improve, and I really liked him in the draft, and that's kind of a guy that I'm gonna have a sleeper impact on. The secondary, I mean, it's the worst safety group, but if you were to have, a bad group, it would be safeties, to be honest, and just in terms of value. But they make up for it because they do have Marshawn Lattimore. They have Mike Sanders still. Trey Amos from Ole Miss in the second round is one of the most ready now cornerbacks that was in that class. And the linebackers are great. Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner are studs. The O-line, I think is pretty good. I mean, you may mention Tunsil. I still think he's a really good tackle compared to what they had. Deebo Samuel, I know he's old, but I still think compared to what they had, it was Terry and a bunch of who's. I think that's still really good. I like Noah Brown. I like Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech. Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, I liked from Kansas State. I just think I liked a lot of these guys and seeing them on their team. I know they traded Brian Robinson. So now they have Austin Eckler. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, everyone's they're all high on him now. I got to him like really late in the draft process. Dude was killing it before he got to Arizona, transferred to Arizona, could only play one game because of this weird like restrictions that he had on eligibility, and he was great in that one game. I think if he played that whole year, he would have been a day 2 pick in my opinion. I think that was an awesome pick for them. Again, it's not a guarantee at all, but I just think Jaden Daniels, like, it's just so hard from watching him to, especially with, I know they also got a little lucky in the playoffs too, and you're right, they got lucky in a lot of stuff. I just don't know if it's going to fall down that much to where they're like not even there. And I think, again, probably just a little bit lower on the Cowboys than you, a little bit higher on the Commanders, but I do actually have the Commanders in the playoffs. So I have 2 playoff teams in here, whereas you only have one, which is obviously the Eagles, and we don't need to touch on the former Super Bowl champion Eagles because we know what is up with them. So we will talk about them later. So if you have no more notes for that division, we can go ahead and move on to the next one. And that is going to be your favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, with the AFC East. And this one might be easy, I hope. And that would be Jets 4, Dolphins 3, Patriots 2, Bills 1. It's just be how good you think a team like the Patriots or the Dolphins will be. Maybe the Jets. I could see you putting the Dolphins at 4 because you hate them right now. But I can touch on what I think about the Patriots because that's the biggest wild card there. The Bills we know about. But touch on give us your rankings and then go ahead and talk about either the Jets or Dolphins, whichever your preference would be, which I think I know which one.
Yeah, I have the Dolphins at 4, the Jets at 3, the Patriots at 2, and the Bills at 1. I just think the Dolphins season has a chance to really spiral very early on. If they get off to a slow start, I think Tyreek Hill's going to begin kind of chirping a little bit, asking to be traded. I just don't think the culture of this team's very well. I don't think Mike McDaniel really has a lot of the respect of many of the players in the locker room. And I just think there's a lot of holes on this roster. It's the worst tight end room maybe we've seen the last 5 years. Like Darren Waller out of retirement, who, was doing illegal substances not too long ago, is our tight end one.
Making great music.
Right. Our tight end two, we have like Julian Hill stepping in. I think we just signed Greg Dulich. I actually kind of like the move to our practice squad. Who knows if he'll get some action this year, but it's just a really bad tight end room. Our cornerback room, the worst in the league. We signed Rasul Douglas to kind of be like a starter for us. He didn't practice all training camp or off season. He was terrible for the Bills last year. So he's going to be out playing. We have Storm Duck. Really sick name, but he's an undrafted free agent from a year ago. He should probably not be starting in his second year in the NFL. And I think our other safety outside of Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be Ashen Davis or Ifatu Melifonwu. So it's just not really a good secondary at all. One of the worst in the league. The offensive line, if it's fully healthy, it can be okay because we put some resources into it this offseason. But as we've seen with really 95% of teams in the league, you're going to lose a lineman for some period of time. And I promise you, the Dolphins have some of the worst offensive line depth that you'll ever see. Larry Borum.
I agree.
Larry Borum is like one of our swing tackles, and if you watched him during the preseason, it was one of the worst tackles I've ever seen in the league. We did just sign Kendall Lamb back, who has been kind of our swing tackle the past couple of years, but the Eagles let him go. So if the Eagles are kind of letting you go and they'd rather sign someone else, like I don't know. Like I just think the offensive line is going to be pretty bad because James Daniels, he's always hurt. He's going to be playing. Austin Jackson, he's always hurt. He's going to be a week one starter. So you have to imagine one or both of those guys will get injured. And then you just have these backups come in. So the offensive line will be bad. You've already got Devon Achane dealing with an injury. We know Tua's injury history. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. I'm just getting it there. So yeah, I have the Dolphins at 4, Jets 3, Patriots 2, and the Bills at 1.
Yeah, I mean, I only had them at 3, so it's not like I had them that much higher. I think they're the definition of a 7-win team, maybe 6, maybe 6 is better. But like you said, they have the biggest, potential to just completely fail. I mean, just with the Hill stuff, I think sucks. Tua, is kind of dependent on that kind of stuff. And with just the issues they have, I think with the secondary, kind of all that stuff you mentioned was pretty clear. The D-line can help, but I don't know if it can save the world or anything.
Yeah, and a quick point about the D-line too. The D-line's good, but you're also counting on two guys that also always get hurt, and Chubb and Phillips.
True. They're
coming off of major injuries. Chubb I don't think has ever played a full season in his career. Why is he going to do it at 30 years old now after not playing all of last season off an ACL? And then Phillips, he's torn his Achilles and ACL in back-to-back years. So even if he plays, how do we know he's still going to be as good as he once was? We even saw in the NBA where Klay Thompson tore his Achilles and his ACL, and he was never really the same player. Again, it's just hard to come back from 2 severe injuries like that. So that's just another point with the defensive line I wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty simple, to be honestly, with picking. Like I said, if they play a team that is pretty good pass heavy, they're going to lose. If they play a team that's kind of really dependent on the run, they could definitely win because the interior of the D-line with Zach Sealer and Benito Jones and other higher floor guys, Kenneth Grant, are pretty good. But like you said, the outside is not as reliable. And then on offense, it's okay, they play a big, nasty pass rush, they'll probably lose. If they play a kind of susceptible secondary with not an amazing pass rush, they will probably potentially win. So they're pretty simple there. And I just don't think, they have the roster, the schedule doesn't help with that, and just the team construction doesn't help with that either. And then I have Jets 4. I think you have them 3. My definition of a 6-win team, Justin Fields, I don't think this is not, let's just chill. This is not going to be some Sam Darnold thing, in my opinion. Breece Hall had a down year. Braylon Allen might come back, but Braylon Allen might be more involved, but I think Breece Hall will come back. Garrett Wilson is good. I don't know if he can be as dominant, especially, or make up for kind of the lack of stuff they have. I don't know how good Fields is going to be at getting him the ball. The guys around him aren't great. The O-line is good, but both their tackles are pretty volatile and young in Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu. D-line, Quinnen Williams, a lot of other younger guys that have been injury prone. I like the linebackers, but I'm not going to rave about you because I like your linebackers and Quincy, Williams and Jamie and Sherwood. And secondary solid. It's just 6-win team, in my opinion, pretty obviously.
Yeah, I think the Jets and Dolphins are really close. Like I think there'll maybe be a win or two, like in difference there. So I don't have
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
like I'm like, oh, you have the Jets 3 or 4. Like, what are you doing? Like, I think they're gonna be pretty similar teams. For me, I just think with the Dolphins, because it's kind of the opposite of last year, where the Jets were kind of this team where it was like, if the season starts slow, things could really erupt. And what happened? Things
Yeah.
erupted. They fired their head coach, and then everybody just kind of quit, like on the team. So I think this year the difference is the Dolphins are that team, and the Jets are the team that kind of has a new coach, a new kind of culture coming in. That just kind of gave me the edge of being like, okay, I think the Dolphins have a lower floor. Let me just have the Dolphins for.
Which is fine, yeah. They have a lower floor. But I have Patriots too. I assume you would have Patriots too. I'd be shocked if you didn't. But the bigger question would be how good are they? Because they could be number 2, but some people don't think they are as good as they maybe will. And that is probably just going to be based on playoffs. Do you have the Patriots making the playoffs as a wild card?
I do have New England being one of my sneaky teams this year, making the postseason. I have them probably around the 9-8 range. I think they might end up being the most improved team I think definitely if I make the postseason, my most improved team from their win total last year to this year. I just think Vrabel just increases their floor significantly. I mean, they probably had one of the biggest coaching upgrades like we've seen in recent memory. I mean, I think the Chargers kind of did too with Staley to Harbaugh, but I mean, going from Gerard Mayo to Vrabel is like night and day. So I think you have a huge coaching upgrade. Their offseason plan pretty much and free agency was just we're going to sign as many good and just solid veterans as we can. Like they're not going to be players that come in and like, okay, they're like a star player, they're top 10 in the league at their position, but they're just going to provide some stability and just be good players. And the Patriots just didn't have many good players last year, and so they just have a better roster overall. And then their draft, I really liked. Will Campbell's looked like a stud already. Travion Henderson looks like a future star running back. So I just like a lot what they did in the offseason, coaching upgrade, and I'll just buy that the Patriots with a really easy schedule and just a really good head coach. I think the second best, maybe you could even argue the best coach in the division. I just have them number 2, making the playoffs as my number 7 seed and having a winning record.
I totally agree. I have the same thing. 7 seed, like 9 wins, maybe 10, depending on how the FC looks. Best coach in the division. Yeah, I echo all of that stuff. They have the second easiest schedule, and it's a pretty large gap between them and like the next teams around there. I just really believe in Drake May. I think he's really good, and I think he had shit to work with, and he took advantage of what he had. And now he has like you said, just totally a big coach upgrade. The defense is going to it's going to be real good. This is probably going to be a top 10 defense in my opinion. I think it's super deep. The secondary, Carlton Davis, Julius Peppers, Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Kyle Duggar if he stays. Like that's a really good group. The D-line is very deep. Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, Harold Landry, Keon White. They drafted Jordan Farmer. Like this is not a star-studded group. This is a pretty high-floor group. It's kind of like the Broncos D-line. They remind me a lot of the Broncos in that way with the secondary strength that they have. My biggest concern is obviously with the offense in terms of the O-line. I think it can be better, and it will be better. It's just how much better. Morgan Moses needs to be healthy and needs to stay on. Garrett Bradbury, Mike Onwenu are solid baseline. Will Campbell, I think we're going to have to see if he can play tackle. If Will Campbell can play tackle at the level that we think he can as a prospect, I have full confidence this will be a playoff team. If he can't and the O-line is shaky and injury prone, that's what makes me worry. But the O-line's not that bad and improved. Receivers is the other thing I would say because Stephon Diggs, I'm just not as confident in with his health and availability and how good he is right now with his age. And after that, like someone would have to step up. I mean, Hunter Henry and obviously Demario Douglas are pretty high floor guys, but Matt Collins, I think Kyle Williams from Washington State would have to have a good role there. But I agree. Henderson, Stevenson, Gibson, they're going to run the ball a lot. Henderson looks awesome. Drake May, I just really like. So I agree. I have this team just sneaking into the playoffs as well. And the Bills, we already know, 13, 12 wins, somewhere around there. Schedule's not that bad, to be honest, for a team that, I say that, not that bad. It's pretty good, like really good for a team like this. So they'll be up there as well. We'll talk about them later. So let's go ahead and switch back to the NFC real quick, and we'll do the NFC South with the Buccaneers representing them last year. Obviously, they've kind of been clowned and known as like the worst division of football for the past few years. Let's see if our rankings are the same. Again, I think so. Obviously, the Saints at 4. If you don't have them at 4, I would laugh at you. I'm not like for real. I don't care at all what you say, but I know you're not going to have many higher, especially when watching your TikToks with Tyler Shuck. That's pretty clear there. I have the Panthers 3, Falcons 2, Bucks 1, with only the Bucks in the playoffs, and that's what I have. Do you have the same exact thing?
We have our first match for match division. Yes, I agree on all points.
Beautiful. And honestly, I mean, the Saints, this might be the least talked about team. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry. Justin Reed is cool. They improved on the O-line. I don't think Tyler Shuck is as bad as you think, but it doesn't matter at all. It really doesn't matter whatsoever. Like, I'm worried about the injuries with Olave. Eckler's older. Like, you can't just give it to him a million times. He's going to get injured. D-line might be the worst in the NFL. Yeah, just not ideal. So I probably don't have much else to add on to that. But Falcons, Panthers. I really wanted to put the Panthers 2, but I just had to be more objective and have them at 3 because of just what the Falcons could also be. It's just I think we're both more tame on the Falcons than others. And I think I think a lot of people, or a good amount, have them winning the division. But in terms of them there specifically, like the Panthers I can touch on after just because they're my favorite team. But if you have anything you want to add for them, you can. But I think they're pretty simple as like the trajectory's up for sure, but they're not there yet. They still have other moves to make, another offseason to go. They're still an offseason away from doing anything there. But the Falcons are the team I think a lot of people potentially have winning the division, but I'm just not really quite there yet.
Yeah, I kind of agree on all those points. I think for the big thing for me, why I didn't have the Falcons number one is kind of the injury stuff. They just lost their right tackle, I think Caleb McGarry, for the season, and they just extended him as well. And it's a little bit more important than their left tackle because Penix is left-handed, so they just kind of lost their blind side protector, which is pretty big. And then the Buccaneers, there was questions, when is Tristan Wirfs like one of the best tackles in the league, and Chris Godwin, how early they're going to be able to play. They're going to miss half the season, 4 games. I think from the report that I saw, they should be ready to go for week 1 or very early in the year. Yes. So we got positive.
I don't know about
Buck
Godwin,
news.
but Murphs, yes, or Wirfs for sure.
Yeah, so we got positive Bucks news on the injury front, bad news for the Falcons on the injury front, and that kind of just did it for me because I think just overall, I mean, the Bucks have dominated this division the last several years. I mean, Tom Brady, then they switched over, got Baker Mayfield, took a flyer on him, like a pretty cheap deal, and then he turned out to be a pretty good player and turned around his career in Tampa. And I just think, again, they're going to kind of be really fun offense to watch. And I think really the only question mark for me is how can they keep replacing coordinators, because it is hard to do that year after year. Does that kind of have the offense start slow and maybe they drop a couple of games? But I think probably 10 wins the division, and I think the Bucks can probably pretty easily get that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not as high of a division as a lot of the others, as they have been for the past few years, because they've been lower as a whole division. But I still think this is one of the better years of recent. And I agree on that front. I think the biggest Falcons thing for me is I don't trust the D-line. I think the D-line has issues, and I think relying on 2 first-round rookies that you took, one of them is already a little bit more raw in Jalen Walker. I'm just very worried about that. The secondary, obviously has one of the best safeties in the NFL. That's just not going to fully do it. Obviously, you got to have more guys there. I like Xavier Watts at safety too, but still the groups there I'm not in love with. And the offense is basically the same, and it looks pretty good. But you mentioned the O-line issues, and I think the biggest thing is how good is Michael Penix? That's what we don't know. How good is he? And I just don't think he's as good as people think. I just don't. And I think he can be good enough because the team around him is good enough, and he is good enough in terms of not being bad. But I don't think he's going to be that good. And that's why I just think they're not going to hit the mark that they are hoping for. And then Carolina would be probably one game behind them. I wouldn't be surprised if they're tied, because the offense, I think, is, to be honest, I would not be surprised if the Falcons and Panthers offense are pretty similar. Like, Falcons might be a little bit better, but I think Bryce Young is definitely better than Michael Penix considerably. The running game is worse, but in totality with Chuba and Rico, it's not that bad. The receivers like Ted McMillan, I think, can come out and be really good. Not as good as Drake London maybe year one, but really good coming out. I know they had weird stuff with Thielen they traded and Renfrow they cut, but Leggett, we got to see what he still has. He was raw coming out anyways. I like Jalen Coker there. The O-line is good. It's a good O-line. It's healthier than the Falcons. It's just the defense is the biggest question mark. The D-line, I think got much better, at least in terms of being a high floor. Like, this isn't going to be the worst D-line in the NFL like it was last year. Derek Brown is back. They signed Bobby Brown. They drafted 2 guys, Princely Umanmielen, Nick Scorton, Patrick Jones they signed. It's a good D-line. Linebackers, obviously not ideal, but the secondary, J.C. Horn, they signed Trayvon Merrick. Keep an eye on Chow Smith-Wade. There's some pieces here. The arrow, like I said, it's going up. They're just not there yet, and I agree. So they're pretty simple 3. And then you quickly kind of touched on the Bucs too, and yeah, I just don't see a big fall off. I'm not going to really predict one just because you feel the need to have some team not win their division or not make it again. If you watch the video on Mathis' channel with the bets that we made, I have the Buccaneers in a playoff division, in a division winner bet, because I'm pretty confident in that. Not much changed. I know the receivers are injured with McMillan and Godwin, but I think Ibuka can step in and play pretty good right away. The O-line, you mentioned Wirf's injury affects a lot, but he's coming off the PUP, and it's a real good O-line overall. The D-line, I think, is going to be improved with Hassan Reddick, Yaya Diaby in another year. Kalijah Kancey, I think, needs to improve. And the secondary looks pretty good. Antoine Winfield Jr. wasn't healthy last year. He is now. They drafted Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State, who I think can be a pretty nasty slot right away. And Benjamin Morrison, who was a pretty good outside corner for Notre Dame. And that's only going to help. So I think a lot of rookies they added really going to help the team. They didn't fall off that much. The coordinator thing is the only thing, but I don't know. I've seen it a few times, and the other guy that was there, he was also the passing game coordinator. He could probably just pick up on some stuff that just like Liam Cohen did. So I think number one's pretty safe there. So do you have any other notes on the Buccaneers before we move on to the next division?
No, I think you kind of hit all the points. Yeah, I agree. We're kind of in lockstep on this division.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the easier ones to agree with, so makes sense. But we'll see if we're the same here, because I don't think we will be with the AFC South. So I only have one team making the playoffs from this division. I think this has the potential to be similar to, obviously, the NFC South. And for me, I have the Colts at 4, the Titans at 3, and then I have the Texans 2, and I have the Jaguars 1. I went back and forth on this. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go in and have a new division winner here, because I just really don't trust the Texans offense, with specifically the offensive line. It worries me so much. They drafted Ariante Ursary. I think he's going to be raw right out the gate. They got rid of Tunsil. I don't love anyone else really on there. I think it could be potentially to be the worst O-line in the league. The receivers, like, I loved the Iowa State boys in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. That doesn't mean I'm right. Like, they could not be great out the gate, and then you're relying a ton on Nico Collins, who has had injury issues the past 2 years. That's the biggest thing for me. They're injured a ton already going into the year. Mixon, injured. Now they have Nick Chubb's corpse and Dameon Pierce, who had a great rookie year and then fell off a cliff. And CJ Stroud, yeah, he's good. He can't carry this at all. He's not good enough to do that. He just can't. Offensive coordinator is a big question mark. I don't know how good he's going to be. I know Bobby Slowick fell off. Well, how good is this guy going to be? Defense, I understand, is great. And it has the potential to be really good with the guys that they have. Will Anderson, Derek Barnett, Daniil Hunter, in terms of pass rushers. The secondary with guys like Devin Singletary, Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, CJ Gardner-Johnson. I understand that. but the interior of the D-line isn't great, so they could get run all over. And the O-line really does it for me, and the injuries really do it for me. So I have them, and they have a pretty considerably harder schedule than the Jaguars do, and I think that was what put it over the edge for me. So I actually have the Jaguars in the playoffs over the Texans, and I can touch on that after you kind of give your opinion on the Texans and give us our rankings, or your rankings for the AFC South.
Yeah, I have the Titans at 4, the Colts at 3, the Jags at 2, and the Texans at 1. We've kind of talked a lot about the Texans now, and I think they're like my lock. I think NFL future bet to win the division. I just think it. I don't think the Colts or Titans are serious contenders at all for the division. So it's between them and the Jags. And when I just look at the operations of the Jaguars and then the operation of the Texans, you could look at the last 10 years, the last however long. I think the Texans are just way better run. I trust DeMeco Ryan as the top 10 head coach. We've never seen Liam Cohen before coach, so there's already some inherent risk there. Can he be good on a whiteboard, drawing up some plays? Sure. He was great with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had Bucky Irving, a good offensive line, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield had a resurgence. It's a little bit different when you're going to Jacksonville now, who has some question marks on the offensive line. You've got Travis Etienne, who hasn't really emerged as a good player or worth a first-round pick. Trevor Lawrence really hasn't emerged. Maybe you can turn around Lawrence like you did Baker Mayfield. I guess that would be kind of what people, if you have the Jags in the playoffs, you're betting on. But I think to an extent we kind of know what Lawrence is at this point. Maybe he can be like a top 12 to 14 quarterback. I don't think we're ever going to see him emerge as like the generational player he was touted to be. So I just think, one, when I'm looking at it, I'm going to take the best coach and quarterback in the division, and zero doubt in my mind that is DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. Lawrence could have a resurgence, and I would still feel confident saying that Stroud will have as good, or if not still a better season than Lawrence. I just think Stroud's better. So I'm going to take the better quarterback, the better head coach. You talked about the defense. Texans defense will be top 5. The Jags defense, their secondary is not good. They have a good pass rush, but I don't think their secondary is good. And it would be helpful if they had Travis Hunter playing corner, but it seems like he's going to play majority receiver, which I don't really think is smart. But yeah, I just think overall, I did have the Jags, I think, around like the 8 or 9 win range. I think they could compete for the last wild card spot, but I'm just not going to go all in on them and have them beating a team that's made the playoffs the last couple of years, won the division the last couple of years, and has won playoff games. Like, I'm just not going to fade them when they really brought back everybody except for the left tackle, who misses games every year, adds up a bunch of penalties, which is a big reason I think they wanted to let him go. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel on the Texans. I'm pretty high on them. We'll see if they can kind of repeat again as division winners. And I think if they stay relatively healthy with just CJ Stroud and, like Will Anderson, I think they'll do it.
I mean, yeah, it's an inherent risk, but the injury bug is already hitting them, and I just have some pieces there I don't love, and I have Jaguars 8 or 9 wins too. I think the winner of this division is probably going to be a 9-win team, to be honest. That's just my opinion, but I think it's just because I view the Texans lower. But I mean, maybe I'm a fool again, and I fall for it again with Trevor Lawrence. I just still think he can be pretty good. Like he's obviously, we talked about this. He's not what we thought he was coming out. He's not going to be that, but he cannot be that and still be a guy that can win the division in a random year in 2025. Like, I still think that can happen with a coach that's coming over who I think it can be pretty good. I mean, I know he's weird and quirky, but your guy over there in Miami made the playoffs, as well. So still a thing that could happen. And I just think some pieces are maybe better than you think. I think their secondary actually is kind of maybe average, maybe slightly above average. Jerrion Jones from Florida State, I really like in year 2. Jordan Lewis is a high floor player that they got from the Cowboys. Tyron Campbell had some injuries last year, and he's back healthy. Darnell Savage is a good player. And then, you mentioned Travis Hunter. I don't know how much he's going to play, but I'm of the opinion if we're in the middle of the season, we need a damn corner, he's going out there. Like, they're not going to not do it because he just doesn't want to. He's going to want to play on the field. Obviously, it's just how much can he play. But I don't want to try and, if you start predicting injuries, then you'll be here forever because every team will have an issue. And the O-line, I just think is going to be improved. I think a lot of the young guys on there, like Anton Harrison, can improve. Walker Little has had a better year than people thought last year. The pass rush is going to be there. Eric Armstead is healthy now. Devin Lloyd, Foyesade Oluokun, I love their linebacker group. The running backs, obviously, individually are issues, but I think in totality, Travis Etienne, Tank Bisbee, Bashal Tutin, LeQuint Allen, like both the guys at the end were pretty solid in terms of drafts. And then Etienne and Tank, I think they can complement each other. We don't have to have one specific back. And I think Cohen knows how to do that. It seems like they tried to do it last year in terms of just make one guy there. No, if we show that ETN is better as a complementary, and that obviously helps running backs, as we've seen with a lot of offenses, being complementary helps just your overall outcome and production anyways. Cohen knows how to do that, and I think he can do that here with Tank and ETN. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, can emerge as a clear wide receiver one. They have Travis, who obviously might switch, and I understand the issues there with, De'Ami Brown, Tim Patrick, Brenton Strange as the other groups. I totally get that. We got to nitpick with some of these groups here, but I believe in Trevor. I understand the people that don't because it's a risk, again, obviously, but I just view the Texans lower. And then the Titans, Colts, I don't know if we need to get too far in. Both could be higher floor teams. You have Titans 4, Colts 3. I have Colts 4, Titans 3, just because I kind of like the Titans a little bit more because I like Cam Ward. I think he could be pretty good. They signed a bunch of free agency. The O-line, I think, is going to improve with Lloyd Cushenberry, Dan Moore, and Kevin Zeitler. The D-line, I kind of like, and with the Colts, it's just like Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. Like, I think Daniel Jones is definitely a better player, but he's had some injury issues. Anthony Richardson's had some injury issues. There's probably a good chance where it's not just one of these guys or the other. There's probably a third quarterback that gets in here a few times, which you're not winning games, to be honest, if someone else is there, unless it's a random older guy that is somehow in the market out there. Jonathan Taylor was pretty disappointing last year. The receivers they have, I like individually, but are they going to be taken advantage of? The O-line is still good, but got worse. The D-line is deep, but not special. I like some of the secondary group players like Kenny Moore. A team's got to be last, and the offense just kind of doesn't do it for me. And yeah, that's kind of there. Did you have anything specific you wanted to say about the Titans or Colts? And if not, then you can just go ahead and jump on my response with the Jaguars, if you have one.
Yeah, I'll just touch on it quick. I just think the Colts, I have them 3 because I just think the roster talent is better than the Titans as a whole. And I think anytime you have a rookie quarterback, I know Cam Ward has played a lot in college, but he's got a unique play style where he doesn't really kind of love to stay in the pocket and kind of go through his reads consistently. I think we could see kind of like a lot of turnovers, but then kind of like a lot of big plays that could kind of have early on maybe ramifications for their long-term outlook of their record. I get your concerns with the Colts. I think they're kind of similar to the Dolphins, where if they start slow, it could get really ugly and they could end up being one of the worst teams in the entire league. And hilariously enough, the Dolphins and Colts play against each other week 1. So I see the point. Yeah, I see the point there with the Colts. It could turn out really badly. I just think Shane Steichen, I guess I have more faith in him than even Brian Callahan of the Titans, and just have the Colts be like a, I don't know, 7-win team. And I think the Titans can just kind of be in that 5-6 range where they improve off of last year, but I still think they're a good, decent bit away. Maybe even, a new head coach. We'll see.
Yeah, so that's the rings there. A little bit, just I was expecting the difference there, but I kind of just went on a limb with the Jaguars. But let's go ahead, the last NFC and AFC divisions, and then we'll quickly go into the playoffs. For the NFC North, this one was the hardest one for me. I'm going to have you go ahead and give your rankings first for the NFC North and who you have in the playoffs as the final NFC teams.
Yeah, so you're throwing me in the deep end here, going first with the hardest division to predict. Yeah, this is always really hard. I mean, every year, you can see every single one of these teams make the playoffs, or at least 3 of them. I think, again, I have 3 teams from this division making the playoffs, and I'll start. My number 4 team is the Minnesota Vikings. This is really hard for me to do because they're coming off of like a 14-win season and looking like one of the best teams in the league last year. But I don't know. Like, some team has to finish 4th here, and I just think I just don't feel good about it at all. But I just have the Vikings at 4. McCarthy's just a huge unknown. How good is he going to be as a rookie? Like I don't think he's going to be as good as Darnold was last year. And if you don't have as good quarterback play, I think that's you're due for a few losses. I think the schedule is going to be harder because the rest of the teams in the division got better. So I think they could still be a good team, like win 9 games, but they just finished fourth because everybody else was better. So I don't see them being like a terrible team, but I just think they're going to take a step back because they're going to have a rookie quarterback pretty much play who's never really been asked to play also like in a pass heavy offense because the Vikings, that's what they do with Jefferson and Addison, Hawkinson. Like they love to pass the ball. And if you look in college, McCarthy, he played in hand the ball off, will run some play action, he'll pass, 18, 20 times a game. That's not how it's going to be for the Vikings. So I just think there could be some adjustment period there. But obviously, it's really hard to bet against Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores. I mean, one of the best coaching staffs in the league. They improved the roster talent again this year. Like, it's so, like, I feel kind of dumb almost, like, putting the Vikings at 4, but I just have to do it. I have the Bears at number 3. I have them probably going like 9-8. I think I'm kind of buying the Bears offseason propaganda again. I have the Lions at 2, which, again, losing both coordinators, I think they just take a slight step back. And then I have the Packers at 1 as my division winner. I love Green Bay this year.
Okay, we can go more into Green Bay later, but I'll tell you, I also have the Vikings 4th.
Oh.
And I agree. There just has to be someone, and I do have them 4th as well. And I just, looking at it, I mean, they have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. I mean, the schedules they have are on par with, other groups that were top teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles. It's just those guys return and have their for sure quarterbacks and offenses there, and this one doesn't with JJ. How good is he going to be? I'm just not sure. And I know he has a great situation with him. They got Adam Thielen back, Jordan Addison, J-Jet, but Justin Jefferson is low-key injured right now. I don't know if people really know that, and I am just not sure about his health for the year, to be honest. Maybe I'm overreacting. Jordan Addison's going to be suspended. Adam Thielen, is good, but you can't rely on Adam Thielen with his age. The running back room, I think, could fall off a cliff, to be honest. Aaron Jones is old. It could still be good, but it's just old. Jordan Mason, was good last year, but how much of that was the offense? I don't know. He's going into a good offense now, so maybe that helps. But, how good is he? The O-line was kind of the hardest thing for me to deal with ranking him here because they heavily invested into it. It's just I don't know how good it's going to be. It's going to be good. It's just, is it going to be good enough to be we're propping it up so much to where this team is going to be still really good? Donovan Jackson, I just don't love the first-round pick, but, as a starting guard, we'll see how he does. Will Fries was a very big bet from the Colts. He only played 5 games, but looked really good. Ryan Kelly as well. I get the stuff here. The D-line is a mix of old and then young with Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard. Linebackers, they got some nice guys. Andrew Van Ginkel, Ivan Pace Jr., Blake Cashman. I like some of these players. The secondary, I think Byron is really carrying. Byron Murphy here, or Byron Jones, I forget his
Byron
name.
Murphy.
Yeah, Murphy, right. Yeah, Byron Murphy Jr. I just think he's really carrying in the secondary. I think it's going to be the biggest issue for them. And I just don't know how, it's just hard for me to have them with this. This division is so hard. If they were in the NFC South, I'm having them make the playoffs. But since they're in here, they're 4th. And mine is all right, quick pause on this before we get into the division. Just to note, yes, this was this was before the gigantic Micah Parsons trade that happened to the Green Bay Packers. So while watching this video, I'm not going to go ahead and spoil anything because it'll come up soon, but to the question of does this change Stone's rankings? Yes, it does. And I think you can see based on what I talk about with where I have the Packers ranked and who's above them and below them, I would essentially put the Packers just swap with the team that I have above them. Again, you'll see all of this later. Mathis's probably would not change in terms of what he has. Maybe the Cowboys just being a little lower. Again, don't want to spoil, but yes, this was before the trade. Now that I know the trade, I am swapping the Packers and the other team that's above them, which you will see. And that is that. All right. Thank you. End this note here. Back to the video. The Packers 3, I'm buying the Bears hype even more. I have the Bears 2 and the Lions 1. And I only have 2 playoff teams. So your number 1 team in the Packers, I don't even have in the playoffs. So I have the Bears making the playoffs and then the Lions keeping number 1. And all of these teams are within like 2 games of each other. So it is so tight. But I can start off with the Bears since I had the hype on them at 2, and then you can go into the Packers at 3, because I think the Lions are pretty simple. Like, they lost their coordinators, the O-line went down, but they still have the great players, so I think they're a pretty simple team to go in. Like, I wouldn't bet them to not make the playoffs, but I wouldn't bet them to for sure win their division. Pretty simple. But with the Bears, like, it feels wrong, but right at the same time as a guy who loves analyzing stuff, because they just did everything I would have wanted them to do. They got, in my opinion, the best coach candidate in Ben Johnson. They had gigantic upgrades on the O-line. I know some had injury stuff with guys like Drew Dahlman, but Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson. They still have Braxton Jones, Darnell Wright. Ozzie Trapilo is a great 6th offensive lineman that you can move around everywhere that they drafted out of Boston College. They have DJ Moore still. Rome Odunze, I think, is going to take a step up. Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet, a 2 tight end set. I really like that. The biggest issue for me is running backs, but I think, he's probably going to get the most out of these running backs here. Like, I don't love Swift, but we've seen Swift be utilized. Roshan Johnson's pretty underrated. Kyle Monangai from Rutgers can be the in-between of those 2 guys. It's a bad running back group, but I think Ben can get the most of it, and I don't think it matters as much. And I just believe in Caleb Williams more. I just really do. I think he could for sure hit the 4,000 passing mark this next season, just with the offense that's around him and the O-line. I know the concerns with him. I just think it's a little bit overplayed, to be honest, in my opinion. And the D-line and just the defense, not the D-line specifically, but the defense, I just think is really good. Like, they just have good starters all around. Montez Sweat, Grady Jarrett, Deo Obengo that they signed. Shamar Turner they drafted from A&M, who's a high-floor player. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards at linebacker. Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, Kyle Gordon, Kevin Byard. These are guys that are, like, they don't really have a bad starter. They really don't. So a complete high-floor defense, an offense that could have a high ceiling with new guys coming in. I think this is... They just did a lot of stuff that I wanted, and I'm going to buy in, and I'm going to have them, I know their schedule is harder because this whole division's schedule is hard, but I really like the group. I really do, and I think last year they were better than people thought, and had just a giant fall down, but I think Ben Johnson stops that with the offensive, just uplift he brings, and that's why I have them at 2. So tell me why I'm wrong of having the Bears higher, and then also with the Packers being at 3, which I have basically them both, I think, one winning 9 and one winning 8 games for me. So tell me about the Bears and then your thoughts on the Packers and why you have them number 1.
Yeah, the Bears, I think, can win 9 games. I think that's what I have them. 9 and 8, being a team that sneaks into the playoffs. But I think for Chicago, their season's going to go one or 2 ways. I think they're going to make the playoffs, which I'm leaning that way, okay, or it's going to be what it's been for the Bears in the past. It's going to be a disaster, and I think there's a world. This might sound crazy because it could completely go just the whole opposite way, but I think there is a world where Caleb Williams kind of struggles in this offense, and we do see like Tyson Bagent start games at the end of the season for Chicago. Like, I think we're going to see one of those 2 polarizing things happen. They make the playoffs, or it completely blows up again, and Caleb Williams is going to be out the door, traded somewhere. Because I think if you've watched a lot of the press conferences of Ben Johnson and the way he's just kind of spoken about just the offense so far and just Caleb's development, like, he's not going to wait around for years to see Caleb improve and show that he can play in Ben Johnson's offense. Because you got to remember, he's coming from the Detroit Lions with Jared Goff, where they had one of the top offenses in the league year after year after year. Ben Johnson knows his offense works. He knows what he's doing, his scheme, his play calling. He knows it's very effective. So if Caleb Williams cannot early on and in the middle of the season, just by Thanksgiving, just be able to function in this offense, go through his reads, complete passes, play on time, play on schedule, I think it could be, it could turn out to be pretty bad. I'm not going to predict that to happen because I do think Caleb can have a good season, but I'm just saying there's a chance. I'm saying I do think there's a chance that could happen because I do think Caleb, his play style has never been sitting in the pocket and completing passes. We didn't see it in high school. We didn't see it at USC. We didn't see it last year as a rookie. And if you're going to play in Ben Johnson's offense, if you're going to become a good quarterback in the NFL, you have to be able to do that. And we've only seen a couple outliers. I think like you could say Russell Wilson was kind of that when he was early on in his career. He wasn't really a guy that played on time a ton in the offense, but I think for most of the time, you've really got to be able to do that. And I think specifically for Ben Johnson and the scheme that he's going to run, you've got to be able to play on time. So I think the first preseason game, we saw some good stuff from Caleb. But then the second preseason game, we saw not great stuff. He had one of his sacks that he took a lot as a rookie, where he held onto the ball for 5-6 seconds and just looked like a deer in headlights. Obviously, you don't want to take too much into preseason one way or the other, but I'm just saying like we need real concrete evidence and a long sample size that Caleb can really just function as a pocket passer consistently. And so I think that's just something to watch there. But I'm just going to bet on Ben Johnson, the roster talent, and just making Caleb good enough where he has a good season. I don't think he's going to be like an MVP dark horse or like seen as like a top 10 quarterback after the year. But
agree.
I think we'll have the offense good enough. I like the defense, like you said, a lot of good players. Dennis Allen, really good defensive coordinator. So I'm going to bet on them to win
sure, too.
9 games.
I didn't make that point. I agree as well. I think they got a great DC, former Saints coach. So we're pretty similar on them because you also have them in the playoffs in the same record. The Packers is the biggest difference. Tell me why you have the Packers number 1 real quick.
Yeah, quickly, I just think Green Bay, if you just look, I mean, last year they went 11-6 and they went 1-5 in the division. I don't think they're going to go 1-5 in the division again, and I think they're going to win 12+ games this year. I think Jordan Love getting hurt week 1 against the Eagles last year was a huge reason why he was kind of sporadic last season. I think if he's fully healthy and they add another weapon in Matthew Golden, I think this is a big year for the Packers, and they have like the new, I don't want to call it like the owner because they don't really have an owner, but they have like a guy that kind of just oversees everybody. They have like a new guy coming in, I think. I think this is his first year next year. And so Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, like they gotta be on their stuff a little bit because they got a new guy coming in now, and if they don't see some really good success this year, those guys can begin to kind of be on the hot seat. So I just think the Packers, I really like the roster top to bottom. I really believe in Jordan Love. I think he's got elite talent, just a really good arm, can move, really good size. And I just think they're going to have a little bit more bounces their way this year and find themselves top of the North.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, obviously, with the Jordan Love stuff. I just think I view all of that just a little bit lower. And with how tough this division is and the schedules all being so hard, I just think I have them a tiny bit lower. But I'm not going to die on a hill that the Packers aren't making the playoffs at all because that's not, especially with the Bears above them, I'm not doing that. I literally last second switched the Packers and the Bears. But it's just a lot in terms of the offense. It could be the exact same. Offense. And I know they drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. Savion Williams is like Laviska Shenault 2.0. So he'll be some impact. I don't know by how much. Matthew Golden is going to have so much on his shoulders because he needs to be impactful right away. I just don't know if he's as good right now as people think. That's just my opinion of draft stuff. I don't really know. And Tucker Kraft might end the year as like the highest receiver on the team, to be honest. Because Watson, I mean, we know is with a mess with his stuff. We've had Reed get injured a ton. Dobbs is one play away from maybe never playing again, and the receiving room could look horrendous again. Jacobs, obviously we know is great, but there's not much behind him at all, so there's not a lot of guarantee, and Jacobs is slowly getting a ton of carries, slowly getting up there, so I don't know how much you can 100% rely on him. The O-line is around average, but I still think there are guys you have questions about, like Jordan Morgan, who didn't play at all last year. The defensive line, I think, is getting older. Rashawn Gary, mostly Kenny Clark, though. They have other guys that have just been here a while that just have not panned out. Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, like these guys are still starting. Lucas Van Ness, are they eventually going to go ahead and get it together? I do like some pieces. Edgerrin Cooper on linebacker, I really like. Some secondary guys I think are good, like Xavier McKinney, obviously. Nate Hobbs is a high floor guy, but they're being a starting like corner that you have with like Carrington Valentine, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams is good. So like their safety group I like, but their cornerback room I'm a little concerned about. There's just pieces here I'm not 100% sure about, and I agree with Love. It's just I don't love, no quote or no pun intended, I just don't love their situation with the schedule and the random holes here, and the receivers could be the literal same issue last year, maybe a little bit better. Maybe I'm wrong on Golden, obviously, but again, I'm probably going against the grain here by having them this low. But one game and they're in the playoffs for me, so literally just like that, flip them. And then Lions, we have one, which just for time's sake, we know the Lions. We don't have to go in on them. I kind of mentioned them already. So we can finish with the last division, and that is with the AFC North. And I assume we have very similar. Maybe one would be flipped. Ravens 1 and Browns 4. That's what I have. I assume you have that too. Who's your 2 and 3? And do you have one in the playoffs, one not? Do you have both in the playoffs? What's your stuff there for the middle of the AFC North?
I had the Steelers at 2, the Bengals at 3, and I had the Steelers in the playoffs and the Bengals missed.
Okay, I'm the complete opposite, but obviously very similar. So I have Bengals 2, Steelers 3, and I have Steelers missing, Bengals making, and I did it literally right before we recorded because I had exactly what you had before. I just got scared. I got scared of betting against Joe Burrow. I know it literally happened last year. I just think last year was the worst case scenario ever. And now, like, I know everyone has been telling me, including you, like, literally nothing's changed. Like, I understand. I just think it could be as different as it being the same last year, except they don't have that, like, bad 3-game beginning stretch, and then boom, they're in the playoffs. They don't, like, they get ready in the preseason. They play all their guys. They get prepared. They come out the gate swinging. They do it the whole year as much as they can. And they sneak into the playoffs. Whereas last year, they didn't do that in the beginning of the year, lost to the Patriots, had some bad stuff, and then they missed the playoffs just barely. So that's kind of my breakdown of it. So it's not that complicated, to be honest. I understand the issues. I'm not going to deny any of them. I just think the offense is that good. And I think in terms of what they have with Chase Brown, I think can take a pretty solid step up and be a guy that people actually know as maybe a more household name. And the defense, like Trey Hendrickson is there. He's back for this year. If he was not in, I would not have them in the playoffs whatsoever. But he's here. And I think the O-line, I think the biggest thing is they have young guys that could improve. Amarius Mims needs to be better this year. They have Lucas Patrick, who they signed, who's a high floor guy, Dylan Fairchild at guard, Ted Karras, who's not bad. Like, it's not a good O-line, but it's not as bad as what it was last year. Other areas, I think, just slightly improved. I understand the issues, but that's kind of why. And then the Steelers I really liked. I really wanted to have them in the playoffs. I think Aaron Rodgers is better than people think. I think DK swap for Pickens is similar, but I like DK more. Run a 2 tight end set, run the ball a lot. The offensive line is volatile, but really young. And I like the youth, Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. I really like the guys there, Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier. In love with that kind of young offensive line. And the defense, they have the best D-line in the NFL. Literally the best D-line in the NFL. Linebackers, Patrick Queen had a down year last year with some injury stuff. No, he specifically didn't have any injury stuff, so that's kind of the issue. He needs to get back on track. They have Peyton Wilson, NC State legend, who's a stud. Cole Holcomb, UNC legend. Not as much of a legend as Peyton Wilson, obviously, but missed a whole year, is back. They fixed the secondary, I think. Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick, sure. Darius Slay is there. They have some other guys, like the safeties are not amazing, but they're not bad. I like Sebastian Castro, undrafted guy at Iowa. I understand, the stuff with them. My only concern is the running game. Like, how good is it going to be? I know they're going to want to run it a lot, but how good can they? That's just how good you think Caleb Johnson is. I think he can be solid. Maybe kind of a little bit lower than James Conner was for them. James Conner now is very efficient. I don't think he'll be like that now. Maybe what James Conner kind of was for the Steelers. But it was the Bengals for me. It wasn't anything the Steelers did. It was the Bengals of just like, I'm just going to put him slightly over. But I understand the Steelers stuff, and I applaud you for doing it because I really did want to do that.
Yeah, I think just really quickly, the Ravens, we already know. I think as long as Lamar plays close to 17 games, they're going to win that division pretty easily. I think they got one of the best rosters in the league. The Browns, on the flip side of that, one of the worst rosters in the league. Terrible quarterback play. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. And then yeah, it's just kind of those two middle teams. I think for me, I just has to do with the overall roster talent. I think the Steelers just top to bottom have a better roster. Obviously with the Bengals, you've got Joe Burrow, and I think he's a future Hall of Fame quarterback and in the peak of his powers. Obviously Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer, but he's not in the prime of his career anymore. I still think, like you said, still really good and kind of underrated at this point. But I just think the Bengals defense, just how the vibes have kind of been. I'm kind of a vibes guy, I would say. And just kind of the vibes with the Bengals all off season of Trey Hendrickson thing, and even with their first round pick, are they going to get him signed? And it's just always something with the Bengals. And I don't know if Zach Taylor's even like, I don't even know if he's good. Like, I get changing the approach. I was actually a fan of changing the approach and having the starters playing in the preseason to hopefully start the season faster. But what if Zach Taylor's just like not good? And the reason why the Bengals start slow every year is because Zach Taylor doesn't really know what he's doing. Like, that's in the cards. So I think, yeah, it's just going to be very similar to last year. The offense, one of the best in the league. Burrow has an MVP type season. Chase is maybe the Triple Crown winner again. But the defense allows 25, 30 points a game. And I think they'll be around that when it like 9, 10, 8, 9 like range. Like, they're going to be in that mix. And I just think that, again, when you have one of the worst defenses in the league, I think I'm just not going to take you very seriously. And yeah, that's kind of what it did it for me, is just the defense. But again, it's kind of splitting hairs because I think both these teams are kind of, they're similar in what I view as their ceiling versus kind of their floor. So I think it can go kind of either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, splitting hairs there. I literally had it right before. So I'm glad I did it just so we have difference and we can see what actually happens there. But that is our divisional ranking. So we're going to finish off the last 10, maybe 5-ish minutes here because, I mean, it's not like these are all going to be correct. Like, it's just not going to happen. So it's more so about, like, who's going to be in the playoffs, and then who's going to be, like, in the conference championship and Super Bowl and who you have win it all. That's kind of the biggest stuff. So in terms of just, we can run down who we have in the playoffs just to remind everybody. My NFC is the Eagles, the Rams, the Lions, the Buccaneers, with the 49ers, Commanders, and Bears. My AFC is the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Jaguars, with the Broncos, Patriots, and Bengals in the playoffs.
Yeah, for me, the NFC, this is in order. I did make sure to kind of just put the seeds of what I'm kind of predicting as well. The number 1 seed, I have the Eagles. 2, I have the Packers. 3, I have the 49ers. 4, I have the Bucks. 5, I have the Detroit Lions. 6 is the Seattle Seahawks, and the number 7 seed is the Chicago Bears. And then in the AFC, I have my number 1 seed being the Baltimore Ravens. I have the Buffalo Bills at number 2, the Denver Broncos at number 3, the Houston Texans at 4, the Chiefs at 5, the Steelers at 6, and the Patriots at 7.
And then obviously, you can kind of do the math in your head of who would play each other. But essentially what we're just going to do, I'm going to have us go ahead and just pick who our final four are for each division or for each conference. I think, for me, I can kind of clearly, you can tell like who's not going to maybe make runs or not. But a lot of this stuff is like, you kind of predict it in the moment, like maybe some people were feeling the Commanders in the moment and then bang, they were right. Or the Lions injury issues in the moment and then bang, they were right. Other stuff, it's a lot of stuff that happens there. So I just don't feel like there's a point in going too in depth. But for my NFC, my final two teams, I do have the Eagles. Kind of obviously, I would say it's just so hard for me to pick against them. They did lose some guys on the roster, but I just think they make up for it with the draft and free agency, like Howie Roseman always does. I just don't think they went down by that much. The O-line maybe has some injury concerns, but I think we'll be back fine. Funny enough, I mean, just if you look at the team, it's just so good that I think Jalen Hurts is the worst part of the team, to be honest, on playing, but that's neither here nor there. But I do have them in the title game, and I have the Rams there too. I really like the Rams, and I think the other teams coming out, I just don't trust right now. I want to see proof that the Lions can win without the coordinators. I want to see proof that the Commanders roster, maybe it is as bad as Mathis says. I want to see proof that the 49ers can come back after a terrible year with some still injury issues, by the way, a completely new defense, and they can do it. I want to see that. And the Bears, maybe they get hot. I'm just not trusting them right now. So I have the Rams and Eagles in the NFC. And then in the AFC, I have the Ravens and Bills. And before that, I had the Broncos and Chiefs losing to them. And so that's kind of my clear top four there. I think with the Jags, Pats, Bengals, I think I easily have those guys lose. I think the Broncos, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens are my clear top four. And in terms of these games, the Ravens, Bills, I mean, I predicted it last year. I know they met earlier, so they couldn't meet in the AFC title game, but that basically could have been the AFC title game. It's just obviously you couldn't get past the Super Bowl champions. So yes, am I stupid for saying Kansas City for the first time is not going to make the AFC title game? Maybe, but guess what? It's probably going to happen at some point. And I just think with the Bills team and schedule they have, the Ravens just team I love, their secondary is so good, and they only got better. They didn't really lose a gigantic amount. The Bills, again, they just slowly add stuff. I know the offense maybe isn't as good as people think or look on paper, but Allen just makes up for a ton, and I think they don't necessarily need all that stuff. So I have Bills, Ravens, and I'll go ahead and reveal who I have winning each of those. But what is your kind of final four for the NFL?
I really love this because you got the Rams making a really deep push, and I don't even have them in the playoffs. And then I have the Packers in my final four.
Yeah, wow.
And you don't have them in the playoffs, so that's going to be kind of fun to just see how that plays out. But I have the Packers versus the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. I just didn't really want to go chalk and have the Eagles in. I mean, I don't know. I think they're going to be my number one seed, but you know what? I'm just going to trust Dan Campbell to go on the road, get a big win at the Link. So I'm going to have an NFC North matchup in the conference championship game between the Packers and the Lions. And then in the AFC, I have sorry. I'm getting confused now. I have so many just different things on my notes. I have the Ravens versus the Chiefs in the conference championship game. And I just think, again, kind of what you were saying, this probably is maybe the year that the Chiefs don't make it to the AFC Championship game. But I think with the way it kind of worked out in my seeding, I have them facing off against the Bills in the divisional round, and I just think the Chiefs have already beaten them 4 times in the playoffs. I think the Chiefs roster is better this year. The Bills roster kind of the same. It's just kind of whatever. So I just had the Chiefs taking them down. So I had the Ravens versus the Chiefs and the Packers versus the Lions.
I'll tell you, I have the Bills just going through the playoffs and making it to the title game because they didn't have to face the Chiefs going into it. So
Right.
Maybe that's why they make it, because they beat the Broncos instead. And if you want to throw a wild card there, if the Broncos really meet our expectations, could they make the AFC title game? Yeah, I wouldn't be too shocked, as crazy as that sounds.
I agree.
So both in Kansas City, obviously, we know them. We're not saying, I'm not going to sit here and act like that's crazy at all. So NFC one's very interesting. The two that we did not have for each other, that would be cool to go back and see. And I would say, I literally was one away from probably having the Packers in the playoffs. I obviously wouldn't have had them going this far, but some interesting stuff there. So for this with Rams Eagles, I already went through. I need to see people prove it. I haven't seen it yet, but the Rams literally almost beat them at the Eagles. So this is so hard. Like, I always go back on that Eagles playoff game against the Rams. Like, if it wasn't snowing like crap, the Rams are winning. They are. So it just in terms of picking stuff, I really want to do that, but I'm not going to. I just can't. I'm going to be the boring chalk guy. I'm going to go ahead and go Eagles just because the roster is so good. The GM still makes up for the losses. I'm telling you, Hurts, like them winning the Super Bowl last year made me be like, okay, it doesn't matter if he like sucks at throwing efficient deep or reading defenses or whatever. Like, yeah, he does what he does. Running, great. Tush push, get shoved behind your ass and score. That's great. Eagles fans are going to kill me with all the crap I'm talking, but like, yes, he's talented. Obviously, I know that. You just overrate him for sure. But the team is just so good, and they proved it because they literally dominated the Super Bowl. So I say, prove it to me. In terms of the rest of the NFC, prove it. And so I'll have the Eagles in. And then the AFC, I have Ravens Bills. You have Ravens Chiefs. I'm going to go ahead and go Ravens. I was all in on the Ravens during the season last year and when the playoffs came. They obviously did not live up to that. I think a lot of stuff has not gone their way. I think in that Bills playoff game they played, they easily could have won. Obviously, we have the Mark Andrews catch, but there were other just little stuff that was really unfortunate. Miscommunication down the sideline with interception that happened in that game, the fumble of Lamar switching hands, just stuff that always doesn't seem to go their way. I just think the roster's too good, and they've had too many of these things that it almost feels like it's due for them. As I know you kind of like these little, just random kind of feel vibe stuff. Like I just feel like it's the Ravens' time, so I'm gonna have them beat the Bills, and I'm gonna have a Ravens-Eagles Super Bowl.
Yeah, I just knew you were gonna do that. That was just gonna be that was honestly gonna be that was like my first instinct was just Ravens Eagles, but I feel like that's one of the most popular picks like that I've just seen.
Probably.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't want to just do that. So that's why I had kind of the Eagles losing. But no, I really like your pick. I mean, I think easily two of the best rosters in the league. I think kind of even just what we've said in the past with the Chiefs, like show me that you can beat them. I kind of get that mindset with the Eagles in the NFC because I do think their roster, top to bottom, is still the best in the conference. I just kind of want to do something a little bit different. And so I have that's why I have the Packers and Lions in the championship game. But I actually have the Packers versus the Ravens in the Super Bowl. I think the Ravens are just, again, kind of what you said. I just think it's their year. So I thought that kind of, though, the last couple years, and they always just come up short.
Yep,
like,
me
it
too.
just seems like, I mean, it's just the same thing, though, with all these AFC teams. Like the Bills, it's like, oh, it's their year, and then they come up short to the Chiefs. Like, it's just been the same thing over and over and over again. You just got to, we're just going to keep doing it, and then eventually one of these times we're going to be right. So
It'll work.
let's just hope that this year it's the Ravens. I think the roster, again, just continues to get better. They had a really good draft, and they brought back all their key players. I think as long as Lamar's upright and healthy, they're going to be really good. And I think we have seen, to this point, kind of steady improvement of Lamar in the postseason. I do think he was pretty good in that Bills game, although he had a couple turnovers. He did bring them back, and honestly, I think the Ravens win that game. If Andrews holds on to that pass in the 2-point conversion, it goes to overtime.
Agree.
I think they win that game. But yeah, I think the Ravens this year, it's their year, have them going to the Super Bowl, and then just the Packers. I don't know, man. I'm just high on the Packers this year. Just really like their roster. Yeah, I just like the roster. I think Jordan Love's gonna have a big season, and they're just gonna be kind of my dark horse team that I'm gonna pick. So Packers, Ravens in the Super Bowl.
That'll be a good one to go back to for sure. And then Ravens Eagles for me. I'm going to go Ravens. I just think they can have a similar defense to the Eagles, and I trust the offense way more because the guy behind center, and I just really respect. I think Todd Monken as the OC has had multiple years. He's shown success. I think he can be a good offensive coordinator. The Eagles obviously are, once again transitioning in terms of losing coordinators. Last time they did that, it wasn't ideal. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen to where they do what they did last time, which is get blown out in a playoff game, but either way, I think just for winning a Super Bowl, I just think the Ravens, I just, like we said, we're going off the slight vibe stuff. It seems like it's their year, but it's backed up. Like you mentioned, they only got better. The secondary, I think, is just amazing. Roquan Smith wasn't even that great last year with health issue stuff. So if he's fully there, that's great. The D-line is getting also healthier because they didn't have certain guys there. So I just really believe in this team. Adding D-Hop, I think D-Hop can still play, in my opinion. Not what he was, but I think in compliments to the other guys there. I think he can still play. King Henry still looks good, and Lamar was my MVP last year. I understand why Allen got it, but he was my MVP, and I still think he can be that kind of quarterback. So I have the Ravens taking home the Super Bowl versus the Eagles.
Yeah, same. I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm predicting another Ravens Super Bowl, I think, for like the third year in a row. I picked them at some point in the season, whether it was preseason or during the playoff predictions that we do as well. I think I've picked the Ravens like 3 years in a row now, but hopefully third time's the charm, and this is the year. So give me Baltimore over the Packers in a fun Super Bowl matchup.
All right, so a little crazy NFC, but AFC we seem pretty aligned on, which I think most people would, because it definitely seems like we know the top three, and then we both had the Broncos as that fourth team. But we'll go ahead and we'll see what happens. We'll go back to this video and see who was right, who was wrong, where, and all that fun stuff. But obviously, thank you for watching if you got this far. Again, podcast style-ish video, so I'll have it on YouTube and on podcast as you're listening. Mathis, thank you for coming on. Again, I'll go ahead and leave his link in the description below. I'm going to do a few stuff over there on his channel because we're doing a weekly betting series on his channel, which should always be fun. We'll go ahead and follow that and win some money, hopefully, with us over there. Mathis, is there anything else you have to say?
I don't know, just appreciate you having me on. It's always a good time and good, thoughtful conversations, and it's going to be another exciting year. Yeah, I can't wait for it, and it's always just the best time of each year, just getting to the fall and the football. So yeah, I can't wait. We're less than kind of a week away at this point.
For sure. Football's back. Enjoy it. We're all excited. We're ready. Thank you for watching. Stay smart, stay sharp, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.